Hello, readers and writers. I am Anthony L. Manna, otherwise known as Professor Grandpa Tonio, the book guy and the writing guy. And I'm happy to catch up with you today because I'm going to read an episode from my latest book, which is Loukas and the Game of Chance, illustrated by Donald Babish. Let me tell you a little bit about Loukas and the Game of Chance. It's the story of a flute-playing boy who befriends a mysterious talking, dancing snake. The snake bestows favor and fortune upon Loukas, but some years later, tempted by greed and pride, Loukas loses all his riches and even his family. He now must embark on a treacherous journey filled with suspense and intrigue to find destiny, sun, and moon. The trek to Destiny's kingdom is terrifying. The strange souls Loukas meets along the way in the forest path threaten his endurance and his will to survive. He trudges on. He will beg Destiny's sun and moon to forgive him for his foolishness at gambling away his family and his riches in a game of chance, a card game. Destiny, sun, and moon will surely allow him to reverse his misfortune, restore his honor, and win back all that he loves and treasures. Won't they? Well, what I'd like you to do today as I read episode number 9 is to think about what must be going on in Loukas' mind and his feelings as well as he leaves Destiny's palace and starts the journey back to his home, what was his home before he lost it, on the island on which he lives in the Aegean Sea. And when he gets back to the village that he left behind, he's going to confront the merchant, the merchant who took everything from him in that terrible game of chance, the card game. As it must be, so will it be. Moments later, Destiny rose from her throne and made her way to the door through which she had entered the chamber. Ilian and Luna soon followed their mother. When the door opened, all three took their leave. At once, a tall, bearded man entered the room. He wore a belted tunic of gray cotton that fell to just below his knees. A soft, close-fitting black cap covered his head. The large pendant that hung from his neck on a silver chain was a copy of the medallion with the silver wings and red glass eye Loukas had first seen on Destiny's scepter and the sleeves of her tunic. Loukas was puzzling over the meaning of this curious jewel when the man gestured for Loukas to follow him. With long, firm steps, he led Loukas down a wide, curving passageway. The sound of their sandals hitting the white marble floor resonated a hollow echo. Loukas' attention was soon drawn to the movement on the domed ceilings. Each dome contained illuminated images of suns, moons, stars, and planets crisscrossing one another in perpetual motion. It dizzied Loukas to stare at them. Further on, Loukas caught sight of brightly colored tapestries gracing the walls. Each was about the size of the woolen shawls worn by shepherds who tended their flocks in the wind-swept highlands. The tapestries revealed copies of the playing cards and images found on the drapery that lined Destiny's throne. Placed alongside the tapestries were large versions of the medallion. The medallion's glowing red eyes spread a soft, warm light onto the passageway. The bearded man stopped at a curtained doorway, drew open the curtains, and stepped aside, motioning Loukas to enter a brightly lit room. There was a clear glass table in the center of the room. The table had 4 stained glass legs in the shape of uncoiled snakes that rose up from the marble floor. The tabletop was set on the heads of the snakes' thick bodies. A marble chair had been placed next to the table. A bed made of black wood was set against a white wall to the left of the table. The bed had been made up with large pillows and a thick red bed cover. When Loukas finished surveying the room, he noticed that the bearded man had left. Once Loukas settled into the marble chair, fears about his journey back to his village drifted through his mind like gruesome wraiths. What if the mountains that meander past refuse me a safe passage until I reveal Destiny's decision about their petition, he wondered. What if River Kimon thrashes me about with deadly gales once he comes to understand the changes Destiny is commanding him to make in his behavior? And the sisters, the 3 crafty sorcerers, they have the power to trap me in an enchantment so bewitching I could lose my sense of peace, of direction, of my very self. A sudden sound at the doorway startled Loukas out of his dread. A trio of tunic-clad attendants strode into the room with platters of food. The pungent aromas spiked Loukas' hunger. He closed his eyes and savored the scents. The smells wafting through the air summoned images of joyful family gatherings where delicious meals brought folks together to celebrate their blessings. In silence, the attendants served Loukas a meal of traditional island fare. They offered him a mixture of fish and greens in a spiced sauce, and grape leaves stuffed with rice, dill, and mint. Another attendant entered the room with a bowl of black and green olives, slices of crusty wheat bread, goat's milk cheese, and assorted fruits. "Friends," Loukas said to the attendants as he finished the meal with a piece of savory cheese, "I thank you for honoring me with such delicious foods." He reached out to them with open palms. Several attendants cleared away the remains of the meal. Another poured a sweetly scented drink from an earthenware pitcher into a pewter goblet she had placed on the table. Then the attendants left the room. As soon as Loukas swallowed a mouthful of the drink, he grew drowsy. The moment he reached the bed and laid his head on the musk-scented pillow, he drifted into a fitful sleep, full of grim visions. In one dream, Loukas watched his wife Thera scrubbing a floor on her hands and knees. The merchant stood nearby. He contorted his face into a sneer, threw back his head, and let out a grisly laugh. In one swift pivot, he leaped into the air and flew out of the room, waving his arms and cawing like a hawk. Still on her knees, Thera covered her face with her hands and swayed slightly from side to side. In another dream, Loukas found his children, Sophie and Petros, sitting on the ground in a closure that looked like a cage. They held hands. Loukas could hear them sobbing. At the cage's entrance, a uniformed guard stood rigid and expressionless. When Loukas' mother and father entered his dream, they stood on a steep hill above the island's harbor with their faces pale and pinched. His father wrung his hands. Not once did they cease scanning the landscape and seascape. His mother called, "Loukas! Loukas! Come home, our dear son, come home." Loukas now saw Lambros, the snake, lurching, twitching, and shaking as he moved to the grating sounds of harsh and jarring music. "Help me! Oh, pity me!" Lambros cried each time the music thrust him into a ragged dance. In the depth of the night, Loukas heard a voice calling to him. He sat bolt upright, trembling, and squinted into the darkness. Slowly, a shimmering presence came into focus in the center of the room. Its glow radiated a pleasant warmth that drew Loukas toward it. When Loukas came closer, he found himself standing before the specter of Keeper of the Forest. Keeper placed both hands on Loukas' shoulders. At first, Loukas thought he might keel over and fall to the floor. Just as quickly, a surge of courage blazed through him once he met Keeper's warm-hearted expression. As Keeper started to fade, the specter blessed Loukas in a calming voice. "May courage be thy compass, caution thy guide, and good fortune thy reward." Loukas took great comfort from Keeper's fervent words. He gazed at Keeper until his spirit vanished. At sunup, the same trio of attendants returned to the room. They bore Loukas' satchel and the clothes he had worn on his journey to the palace. One of them stepped forward and gestured Loukas to sit. She set about replacing the bandages that protected his feet with fresh bandages. Another attendant laid before him a parcel of rusks and cheese to take on his journey. Once the attendants left the room, Loukas dressed and dropped the parcel of food into his satchel. Moments passed before the bearded attendant returned to the room and beckoned to Loukas to follow him. He led Loukas down a narrow corridor to a massive wooden door. The door was embellished with replicas of the medallion with the silver wings and red glass eye. The bearded attendant knocked once. "Enter," called Destiny. Loukas grew wide-eyed the moment he stepped into the room. He found Destiny standing in the path of sun's early morning brilliance, filtered through a tall, stained glass window. She was bathed in a wavering stream of glowing colors. She invited Loukas to draw nearer. Loukas struggled to catch his breath as he looked intently at Destiny while moving within her reach. Once he stood before her, he yearned to thank her, Luna, and Ilian for allowing him the hope that someday soon he might once again be blessed with all that he treasured and loved. When Loukas realized no words could ever express the depth of his gratitude, he held Destiny in a fervent stare. He sighed deeply and raised his palms toward her to show his indebtedness. O mortal wanderer, fare thee well, Destiny said. She placed a hand on each of Loukas' shoulders and met his stare with serene certainty. Loukas would forever hold close to his heart the surge of compassion he felt at Destiny's gentle touch. Moments later, the bearded attendant returned and dropped to one knee before Destiny. Once he stood, he waved Loukas to follow him. Loukas bowed grave thanks to Destiny and left the room on the heels of the attendant. Loukas soon stood with the attendant at the head of the path that would lead him back through the forest and then onto the road that would take him to his seaside village. As Loukas started off, he heard Destiny, Ilian, and Luna singing to him in one compelling voice. May trust light your way, may courage be your guide, may victory be your reward. At once, a palace steward poured a bucket of water onto the path to wish Loukas a journey as peaceful as a gently flowing river. And so, readers and writers, we'll leave Loukas today on the path back home to his seaside village. What will happen to him as he retraces his steps and finds himself meeting up with the characters, with the beings that he met on his way to Destiny's Palace? May I say to all you readers and writers, if you wish to look up, visit, watch, and listen to episodes 1 through 8, go to my website, Anthony Manna, that's Manna, anthonymannabooks.com, and click on the media section, and you will come to the recordings 1 through 8, and soon number 9 will be there. And so I say farewell, be safe, have happy days, and keep reading. Thank you. Goodbye.